naked selling, like in the FTX case, where they sold Bitcoin they didn't have. But all of these things come to roost. And again, nobody really figures out what a scarce asset like Bitcoin will do when the shit hits the fan, because it's never happened before. Every other asset, there's always been more supply when more supply is needed. And people are treating Bitcoin like these things we've had in the past, but it is a different beast altogether. So I think that there's another point which I want to touch on, which is the cycles. So if you flip a coin 3 times and you get heads 3 times in a row, or let's say you flip a coin 4 times and you get a pattern, right? You get heads, tails, and then you flip it again a few times and you get heads, tails, and you do it again and you get the same pattern. Is that going to keep happening forever? I don't think so. Each flip is independent of another flip. So there is no guarantee that there are cycles. And I think it's a mistake to assume that I'm going to trade this forever and there are always going to be these cycles. Because what Bitcoin is doing is replacing the financial system. It's not an asset that's trading within the boundaries of the financial system. It is going to be
Bitcoin through paper.
I'm not really sure I can. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. But Clem, if you think it's so bad, why don't you just short it? Like short it in size with everything, because it's really bad.
Do you know what? I'm not a fan of shorting. I'm not very good at shorting. I just don't own it. Yeah, I'm very good at longing. I've got go-agains on my wall because of Bitcoin, and I like them there.
Clem, let me ask you this, Clem. Do you think that there are superior digital assets to Bitcoin in the crypto space?
If you wanted to state that in the future there'll never be a better crypto than Bitcoin, the first one, then I think that's a very brave claim.
That is the claim.
Yeah, but it seems to me to be rather speculative to imagine that the first crypto that came out is going to be the best one ever.
Well, the challenge there is that everyone can make a clone, and you did touch on that, Clem. You said, you can make a fork of Bitcoin, you can make Ethereum, you can make Ripple, all these Bitcoin-like things that emulate Bitcoin, but none of them are Bitcoin, and this is why Bitcoin.
If pretty you weak, look though, isn't it?
It's what?
It's pretty weak, that, isn't it?
I mean, go look. You're in the UK, right? What's the pound doing today?
It's not being pushed around by Mickey Mouse organizations trying to buy more.
It's being pushed around by some economic factors. If David, you pull up the chart.
Yeah, global forex is a big deal, and it's pushed. If it's pushed around at all, it's pushed around by governments, not by shadowy people traders that want to buy more.
But Clem, governments are buying it now. What makes you think governments are not pushing the price down to buy more?
They're buying gold too. It's not going to go through the roof. Well, it might do well over the next 4 or 5 years, but it's not going to double and triple and go 10x.
Right.
I mean, they're buying gold big time. I mean, China's loading up like trucks of it, but it's not going to 10x. And, people who look at Bitcoin now, they're looking at 1 million. That's a 10x. Not a 20%. It's 10x you're talking about. And, the Chinese government, the second most powerful country in the world, is filling itself up with gold. It's not going to 10x. It might go 20% in the next year, 30%.
Yeah, but pay off the debt. And other politicians in the US have said the same thing too. So if that does catch on, then you do have this step transformation of Bitcoin into a reserve asset. And this is why there is no cycle. It's just replacing fiat money.
Before I get Clem to respond, how is Bitcoin going to be used to pay the debt? Like mechanically speaking, they're going to buy the Bitcoin and then use it to pay off debt once it appreciates. Is that the logic here?
Well, I think they need to accumulate some Bitcoin in the treasury. So they want 1 million coins, which is difficult to acquire. And then you would be able to say, we'll meet debt requirements with Satoshi. So $1 equals 1 Satoshi now, which puts Bitcoin at $100 million a coin. And then at that point, you just say, you get a Satoshi every dollar that we owe you.
Okay, Clem, do you agree that a new monetary system needs to emerge? And if so, is it going to be one that is backed by Bitcoin?
Well, it's not going to be, is it? I mean, why would government chop its own head off by tying itself to an asset that it doesn't control? I mean, it has a monopoly of violence.
Yes.
Yeah, the dollar's not going anywhere. If anything, it's going up.
The dollar.
People have been singing about the dollar dying for years and years, ever since I was a child, and here it still is, still strong, still the number one currency.
It is the number one fiat currency because it's the reserve asset currently. But if you go back in history and you look at every reserve currency of the world, they last for about 100 years, more or less. And if you go back and you look at the dollar, like David can pull up a chart, the purchasing power of a dollar over the last 100 years, from 1924 to 2024, it's gone to about zero. You're literally incorrect that it's held value over time.
I think, yeah, I think we're.
I never said it held value.
Yeah, in the sense that inflation happens, the fiat currency buys less and less of things over time. But how does this relate to Bitcoin? I mean, is Bitcoin the future of money? Is it the medium of exchange of the world, the de facto medium of exchange? Is that where we're heading towards? Is that what you're saying, Samson?
I believe so. So if you look at all the fiat money right now, it is a grand experiment. Say we're on track to become a unit of account, and that is probably when we get to 500K per coin or something like that. And that's the point at which we start to demonetize gold, demonetize real estate, things that have been used to store value in proxy because there's nothing better. And when Bitcoin reaches those levels, people will start to say, okay, I'm not going to sell you a house for pounds anymore. I don't want the pounds. It's driving out the bad money at that point. And they'll say, pay me in Bitcoin. And all of the technologies that companies like Blockstream, Jan3, and others that are building, this is enabling Bitcoin to be paying, for a cup of coffee using second layer technology. So absolutely, Bitcoin is going to replace everything. It's going to be a store of value, medium of exchange, and a unit of account.
Okay, to Clem's point about security, let me just pull up this. You're both aware of the breakthroughs in quantum computing. So people have been writing about the impact of quantum computing, with the potential impact on cryptography and Bitcoin in particular, with the arrival of Google's Willow, which is astronomical.
And the existing financial system is far at greater risk. Like your bank PIN is 4 digits for the most part. A private key to Bitcoin is far, far more complex and larger.
And what's your mother's maiden name, Samson?
Sorry?
What's your mother's maiden name?
Clem.
It's my little joke.
Clem, so if you don't believe that Bitcoin has a place in the government's treasury, do you think it has a place?
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. Of course it has. It's another asset. It's just another asset. It's not this magical, all-powering, earth-devouring, marvelous thing.
So yes or no? Should the U.S. adopt Bitcoin as a strategic reserve?
In the same way as it does oil and it does other metals and commodities. Yeah, sure, why not?
Okay, so there's nothing wrong with that per se.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
But do you think it'll have any impact on the price, short-term or long-term?
Not really.
Okay, I think
the oil reserve, the strategic oil reserve of America doesn't affect the oil price that much.
What is the value in all
else? If you could coalesce and have that critical mass, then there wouldn't be Solana. Those Solana guys would be working on Ethereum, but that's not the case for altcoins. Everybody is motivated to create their own new altcoin, as you're saying, to serve some niche. And more people that are new, that don't understand it, might buy that narrative. But the people that have gone through, a couple of years in the space, they kind of understand eventually that, okay, altcoins exist to mine Bitcoin from people, right? And if you look at the behavior of a lot of the crypto founders, what do they do when they do their ICO? They buy Bitcoin. Who are some of the biggest holders of Bitcoin? It's Tezos, EOS, the guys that did ICOs to launch their token. How's their token doing today? You can go check. How's